Welcome into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Let's go! All right, so we happen to be a day late because I'm a gigantic vagine right now, being sick. I am dying, Gresh, along with the great Jason Anik. Hello, buddy. How are you?
Better than you, man. You don't bang out very often. You've been working in this business a long time. This is the first day you've banged out sick in how long?
I would say easily like 14 years. My wife keeps track of this stuff. It's been forever since I've been sick. And I did it to myself with some like overnights, like an idiot. You know, before we went to Vegas, I ended up staying up all night before we flew out there. We just drove back from Florida with my in-laws' dog and the car and all that stuff. And I stayed up all night, couldn't go to bed till like 7 a.m. Then woke up at like 10. I completely effed myself. So it's really all my fault. I got shadows in here. I'm a fucking disaster.
Good. You're good. So we moved Gas Morning Drive. Thank y'all for being with us. A day late, a day and an hour, if you will. So any real engagements that you had to postpone or bang out of?
No, not really. No,
Right.
I kind of, I mean, this was really the only thing on the docket. You know, like when my father-in-law says, "Hey, I need you to come in to have a meeting," it's like, well, you get your ass up and you get in there. You know, it's the matriarch or patriarch, whatever of the family. But hey, listen, I'm here. I'm all right. I'm a little shadowy or whatever. But how are things in your world, friend? I know in the UFC landscape, there's a lot of chatterbait going on right now about what could happen in one of our favorite sports.
Yeah, a lot going on in the lightweight division, welterweight division. Have to say, a lot of dominoes sort of fall because Bilal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena, that result was what it was. Jack winning and Bilal not retaining his belt. So, yeah, I mean, I'll touch on some of that later. Patchy Mix coming over, injected into the organization, the bantamweight division, which I can't get enough of. We'll talk about 316, 317 a little bit. It's a Boston sports show, so we'll bring you Patriots, Red Sox, you know, but Bruins, but the Celtics, I have to say, like, we have to watch the Knicks play tonight, correct? Knicks play tonight in the Eastern Conference Finals, not the Celtics. New York Knicks hosting game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
And you know what? I wonder if the networks, Jay, are going to do a good job of kind of preconditioning the audience as to how these two teams battled each other in the 90s and some of the history. You know, I know we had a game last night in the Western Conference, and it's really two new teams. You know, OKC had never been there. Ant-Man's back once again. He rolls his ankle, and that, you know, that's a crippling blow. He is the most important player, I think, to any team, let's say. I'm talking about Anthony Edwards because there really is no number 2, but it does kind of it does suck tonight, you know, but at least the happiness hedge brought a little bit of happiness in the Celtics loss along the way for certain people in the gambling space.
Yeah, and I will say, this is I'm the one who's been using that term, happiness hedge. Scott Van Pelt originated it, but my brother hates that term, and I hate it too now. No happiness. No happiness with the Celtics being eliminated by the New York Knicks. Did you see what Jaylen Brown had to say? It feels like dying, except good things his parents told him there's life after death. There most certainly will be, and we'll get to the Celtics. But in terms of the Knicks, Pacers, and, you know, in the Western Conference, OKC, Minnesota, you know, the last none of these teams have won a title except the Knicks, and that was what, in 72, 73 or whatever it is. For a Celtics fan, that just doesn't get me all that excited. So anyway, we'll get into the topics here. We got a lot to say. Let's start with the Boston Red Sox, if you will. And Cody, I'm going to throw you under the bus right out of the gate. Gresh, I know maybe you're dealing with this topic here, but he's Cora on the hot seat. In my world, no fucking way. So that's the title, but you had that somewhere in the rundown. You start.
Yeah, here's my worry. Is that what is the John Henry sort of modus operandi when things are going bad? Because right now I do think John Henry has a ton of faith in Craig Breslow. Not that he shouldn't in Cora, but I just feel like Breslow is kind of the guy of the moment. And how do they shake things up in the John Henry world? they normally get rid of the manager or the coach. Look at what happened in Pittsburgh recently. Mike Sullivan, right? Like Mike Sullivan got, I do believe, hired in like 5 days or something like that. It was more of the holy shit, that guy's really out there. And it would be the same thing with Alex Cora. And I just wonder, Jay, if the right losing streak at the wrong time, losing 8 of 9 going into an all-star break, or say something like that, because it's evident there's no leadership on this team. It's very evident there's no leadership on this group. So I wonder if Cora will ultimately be the fall guy for a group that is incomplete in certain ways.
Well, if they don't want Alex Bregman to stay for more than 1 year, that's a great modus operandi. And yeah, it's all over the internet. I just don't care. I absolutely love Alex Cora. I think it's a huge mistake they get rid of him. I'd be trying to lock up Bregman long-term. He is not the problem, and I don't even think there's a problem, right? They're 25-25, right? I understand the Yankees are a far better team. Both in terms of how many runs they've given up and how many runs they've scored. But the Red Sox are 4.5 games back. It's like they're just not clicking, right? They lose 4 out of 5, but then they win 4 out of 5, whatever. But if they win tonight, right? Garrett Crochet on the hill, chances Mets go 1 game over 500. Then you get the Orioles coming in, who've lost 8 straight. They're like 15-32. So I think a run may be coming right here. Since John Henry met with Rafael Devers, the numbers, 10 games since that meeting, Devers 15 of 35. That's a 428 clip, 4 home. 13 RBIs. This is a long season. It is what it is. You've said before, April, you can sort of throw yourself out of it, or April and May, whatever it is, but they're sort of in it to an extent, right? So to me, you sort of got to trudge through this. You go on a streak where winning 8 to 10 in a row, then everything changes, a little more juice in the locker room.
I guess for me, Jay, it comes down to we're approaching Memorial Day, and that's when you really start to know kind of what you have. And there is no big injury excuse for the Red Sox. Like, even though Casas is down, no one is saying, boy, they'd be 4 to 5 games better if Casas had been in the lineup full time and actually like producing. So that's why I wonder sort of what in the world are they thinking? How are they thinking of shaking it up? And honestly, the one thing that probably protects Cora is that John Henry would have to write a big check to get rid of the guy. And it's
how
just
big?
It's I think he still has 24 million maybe left on his deal. It's big for a manager, let's put it that way. Like, relative to his peers, I think Cora is in the $8 million a year range, which in terms of managers is pretty high. You're right. John Henry could stroke the check and not even think twice about it. I just don't know if there is anything seismic out there to jumpstart this team. And are they overvaluing what they have internally? Like, is there some sort of nerd Carmine computer like there was when Theo was here, who is spitting out data saying that, you know, if the manager was a robot, we would be 3.5 games better, something like that.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting. You see some of these tweets like, oh, how long are Red Sox fans going to give Alex Cora a pass? I'm going to give him a pass for a really long time. I'd be lying to you if I'm telling you I'm injecting all 9 innings of every baseball game.
No.
But are there any glaring, I mean, is he just mismanaging the bullpen? Like, am I missing something in terms of what he's doing? Because I actually still believe in this team to some extent. I mean, the Devers stuff is super encouraging for me. That's the stick that matters most in the lineup.
And I do think that maybe that's something that takes some heat off of Cora. But then again, you know as well as I do, the longer you're in Boston, the more people are going to be persnickety and like calling for your head. You know, how many of the Ron Borgeses were out there waiting for 21 years for Belichick to slip up so they could say, ha, I told you so. I do think baseball fans, when it comes to managers, are very judgmental because they think they can run the game. Hey, I used to coach Chucky's Little League team when he was 10, you know, that kind of thing. But it's the way the Henrys do business, Jay. That's more this reaction from me. It's how they go about their process of trying to fix things and fix teams. And I'm not inclined to think that John Henry looks at this group and says, yes, it's time for me to start spending above the tax again and really think that we're going to go on a massive run. They might be a year away from that if they can cash in this year. But when you start approaching 60 games, people in front offices start making judgments. And I just hope there isn't a big slide coming because, again, I just think this is a team with no leadership. And if you have no leaders, you're going to be nothing but mid. And unfortunately, it's on Alex Cora.
Yeah, I don't agree with that in terms of the leadership. I just think maybe it's not come to the forefront yet. I think Bregman has some leadership ability, but is probably maybe biding his time a little bit. But don't forget, Alex Cora was suspended for a full season, and they brought him back for a reason. I really do believe in him ultimately, to use a line from Jared Carabas, that's my manager. You can be sure that's my manager. And, championship windows are futile. Opportunities to win championships can be futile. I'll get to that Catherine Veritek thing in a second. But if this Red Sox team can get in the tournament, right? If they can get in the tournament, and look, I have less appeal for regular seasons in certain sports, basketball and baseball. I love the NFL regular season, but basketball and baseball regular season, a little bit of snooze fest for me sometimes. But if they can be in contention and get in this tournament, I like the roster for the postseason, and I certainly want Alex Cora leading them in that postseason. You can pull up the Catherine Veritek tweet, Cody.
Oh Lord,
Cody sounds like he wants her fired. Yeah. That's okay.
Catherine Veritek went on a drunk tweeting binge last night, then deleted her account. So not sure what happened there, but that's sure to help with the vibes. Yeah, that has happened before. Here's the thing. You're not going to do much better than Alex Cora as a manager. I just worry about this is the way the Henrys do business.
No, I hear you.
Should Cora go nowhere? 100%. However, there are some of those rabble-rousers that are still around. And again, this is, for those who really want Alex Cora gone, they're saving those Catherine Veritek tweets or Instagrams or whatever to make sure to roll those things out because, Cora is now the longest tenured guy around here. No one's going to take shots at Vrabel. Bruins don't even have a freaking coach yet, for God's sakes. And everybody loves Joe Mazzulla to this point. But hell, even Mazzulla was catching some hell on Boston Sports Talk this past week of how he didn't manage things properly and will he grow as a coach and stuff like that. So some of this is also, I think, the market that we're in. But listen, I'm with you. Cora should go nowhere. If it is up to the manager to be the leader, I want it to be Alex Cora, not some of these other managers.
I agree. And I have some stuff on Mazzulla as we get to the Celtics. And I guess for me, with a long baseball season, I'm glad the Red Sox haven't sort of faded, if you will, and they've sort of trudged along here. So I'm ultimately really looking forward to watching them tonight in a way that I maybe haven't been, because I feel like there's some juice, and I hope that they're looking at this series coming up against the Orioles as a real opportunity. Plus 125 to make the playoffs. I don't know how much I like that, though.
It's at least a fair number. And Jay, I think if you and I had really done a deep dive on baseball at the beginning of the season, would we have said that right now, about 50 games in, that there would be one team at 500 and three teams below 500 in the American League East? Like, I think we all thought the division was going to be better. Toronto's a game under 500 right now, and they made some pretty big moves in the offseason and made sure to keep some of their own. So some of the reason that the Red Sox look okay is in part because the division is down this year, and that's a good sign for them, because even if the Yankees are going to go run away, say, with the division, if you're a relatively close second and you're above 500, then you can kind of punch your ticket to the playoffs. But my God, we have such a long way to go. It's crazy that we have to put tent poles in the season to stop.
And that's why to me it's a stay the course situation. I think you and I both feel like, and we're on an island, that Tristan Cassis addition by subtraction in terms of the culture. I'm a big culture guy in terms of if a team's going to win a championship. A lot of people think they weren't good enough to win in 2018, but the banner is in the building. So I can't wait to get to Fenway Park. Did you see those new City Edition jerseys? I don't know, the City Connect, those are sick. They're the color of the green monster with all the letters, the numbers sort of in that font. Dope. Your thoughts?
I know that they tied it into the marathon, but I like these better than the original.
Yeah,
I think these fit more of the baseball team than getting used to that bright yellow colors.
How long are we going to spend talking about the Boston Bruins, by the way? That's hilarious to see the Bruins on the board. But there you go. I think those jerseys are sick.
Yeah, those do look pretty dope. I was going to say, here's 2.5 minutes of Bruins, because there was at least a little bit of news. The Bruins re-signed on Sweeney, the GM, 2-year extension. The Bruins will end up getting a first-round pick from Florida in 2027 for the Marchand trade. So thank God Marshy went down there and was Marshy on the third line, playing a bunch of shifts. They ended up making it to the conference finals. So, from that end, at least they got a first-round pick from Marchand, which makes you feel a little bit better about that. But as I think they say, the deal has matured. Okay, whatever. It's more of Don Sweeney and Jay. I'm just going to say this because I know we're not going to spend a ton of time on hockey. We're now back to kind of what we were a little bit, before Patrice Bergeron and crew. We're back to the old boy network. We're going to go back to not thinking outside the box. It's just going to be paint by numbers hockey. And, I don't think Don Sweeney's a terrible GM. I don't think he's a great one either. He's not the kind of guy that excites you to run an organization, however the fuck they say it in that sport. But you had a good coach. That guy went deep in the playoffs. So it feels like right now, all they're doing is stepping on their tail at every turn.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Bruins, right? I mean, Pastrnak turns 29 a few days from now. That prime isn't going to last forever, but I think they'll find their way back. But I want to talk about Brad Marchand for a second, right?
Please.
Anyone who didn't see Brad Marchand Game 7 against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Awesome.
I mean, dude was the fastest player on the ice, just everywhere, looked as if his life depended on it. And when I think about when Tom Brady went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was a little bit difficult for me. I would not say that I was rooting against him, but it really stung me, right? Whereas when Brad Marchand, and there are other examples I could sort of think of, like when KG went to the Brooklyn Nets and Pierce, I'm rooting so hard for those boys, even though I didn't. But gosh, it's easy to root for Brad Marchand. And when you think about the Stanley Cup in 2011, it's so long ago. He's such a Bostonian in sport spirit, the way he is on the ice. And you brought up when they traded him, I hope they have some sort of tongue-in-cheek deal to bring him back. And whether they do or not, if he becomes if he's an unrestricted free agent, whatever happens, but gosh, I'm rooting so hard for him to win a second cup. He's so fun to watch, and I don't really care what jersey he's in. We're down here in South Beach. I usually don't root for Miami teams, but give me all of 63. No one else is going to ever wear that number in Boston, I hope.
So think of this. You mentioned it, Jay, when they won the cup. Remember that guy when they won the cup? He was a buzzsaw. He was a pain in the ass. He was a dude who was beating people in the corner, beating people to pucks, aggravating the hell out of people. That's the Marchand that has played for Florida this year, not the top line guy who's got to come in and score 40 goals. So as he's gotten older, he's kind of back to the role that, if we're being real about it, that he truly excels in. I think Brad Marchand's got to work hard to score 35 or 40 goals in a year. Some of them do come naturally, but you understand what I'm saying. This is the little prick that everybody hated in 2011, who's now come back with scoring ability, and fall asleep on him, and he will make you pay. I'm with you, Jay. I watched that game. I watched the third period of that Game 7 just to see what Marchand offered. And it reminded me of that young kid that everybody hated, but you respected and you wanted him on your team.
I don't know enough about hockey to know about his Hall of Fame credentials or not.
He's going.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
He's in.
Yeah, okay. So damn good thing, right? But I can't help but have the name Julian Edelman pop into my head, right? And John spent some time with Julian Edelman at the Patrick Mahomes golf tournament and said he's just jacked,
Yeah, he is
a physical freak. But it's interesting, right? So you think about Julian Edelman, and I'm not trying to have a conversation about his Hall of Fame candidacy, but gosh, man, these guys just have achieved so much. And I'm just so happy to have sort of a reason to watch the NHL postseason, because for me, a guy that played how many years, over a decade in Boston, I mean, it's so easy to sort of root for him. So
that's also tough to do as well, because there were some ups and downs in there, and it does make you feel, when the Bruins tried to do their version of The Last Dance, and they brought back Krejci and they put Marshy back in, and it was like Tuca was flirting around. They tried to put the band back together, and they won that President's Trophy and then lost in the first round. That's a killer. We're never going to get that
first
one
round
back.
to the eventual champion.
I do believe so. Yeah, that might have been the beginning of the Florida run. Now that I kind of reach back and think about it, but we have to get to some Celtics, because there's more to unpack, and a lot like hockey players, Jay, where we would hear that, Patrice Bergeron played with a burst testicle and a deflated lung and a brain injury at the end of these playoff runs. We find out that Jaylen Brown played with a really busted up knee. Partially torn patella, I do believe is the word. Meniscus, thank you. And of course, Tatum got hurt as well. And just a real deflating way. I love the fact that Jaylen Brown battled through it. Don't get me wrong, because he did what the great players do, but it's just a little deflating to hear that both of your star players have broken down at the end of if we're being fair, about a 5 or 6 year run here. And these guys are finally starting to get hurt.
So we had talked about the fact that Jaylen Brown wasn't right. But I will say I also have a partially torn right meniscus right now, right? And what I'll say, it's really interesting because Missoula said that Brown told him by the end of the series against the Knicks, it was starting to feel better. And the irony is when I finally got my MRI, it was feeling better, right? So it can sort of heal by itself. You know, you don't necessarily go in there. You probably do if you're an NBA player, but I'm not trying to go in there. I'm sort of managing it. And I'm not comparing myself to Jaylen Brown, but I think this is a piece, but not sort of a huge piece of what happened in this series. Because I do think he sort of was getting healthier, even though more was asked of him as this series went on. You know, Brad Stevens talked about, I had Marchand on my brain. Stevens talked about the first 2 games in the series, and I'm paraphrasing, but just the opportunities in those 2 games. And gosh, I hate to, I'm not going to go down a road and say, oh, Tatum and Brown with that turnover pass, that sort of unorthodox pass that led to Tatum's injury. Oh, that never happens if they win game 1 or 2. But gosh, with the utmost respect to the Knicks, to feel as though sort of the better team didn't get through the series and to be a fan of the better team. And then because of sort of throwing up all over yourselves, you find yourself in different situations in different games that leads to this. It's just such a disappointing exit. We haven't been on since the Celtics have been eliminated. We both thought game 5, maybe they'd show something. And last week on the show, I sort of talked about, oh, there's no way. I wasn't really talking about game 5. It's just when Tatum went out, I didn't see them getting through this series. Wish they hadn't lost game 6 by fucking 40.
Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing to go back down there and get spanked like that. And you knew there was at least going to be a stand. Wasn't going to carry over to game 6, and clearly it didn't. I do think the Jaylen Brown thing is, even though it didn't have the direct effect, as you say, on the Knicks series, I do wonder about the effect it's had on him sort of playing through that injury and now trying to hit the reset button. You know, when Tatum got hurt, Jay, the number came out that since coming into the league, no one had played more games than Jason Tatum, both regular season and playoffs. And when you add 2 Olympics in there and, all these extra playoff games where these guys are at 120, 125 playoff games, each of them, we sort of should have expected that at some point there was going to be a breakdown. Now, does this become the change agent for Brad Stevens? Is this there's the one big injury. Let me make sure I move on him now before I'm the one left dealing with the second big injury. And I would say this much more in terms of Jaylen Brown than Jason Tatum, clearly.
So Stevens talked about sort of the fact, talked in a sense that Jaylen Brown wasn't going anywhere.
That's what it sounded like to me.
And I understand there's so many different ways this thing could go down in terms of transactions and the luxury tax thresholds. But I really hope that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown remain together as that sort of 1-2 punch, because I really do believe that's their best chance to find their way to another banner in the next 7-8 years. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I put the caveat on it of the what comes your way that forces you to think. Someone brought this up to me the other day on one of my national shows, and I've been sitting on it to bring to you. But there's a guy down in Houston named Ime Udoka, whose top player is a young guy in Jalen Green. Now, I'm not saying they're looking to trade Jalen Green, don't get me wrong, but they need kind of an alpha down there. Fred VanVleet is a nice veteran player, but he's not Jaylen Brown. You know what I'm saying? So I wonder if ownership tells Brad Stevens, we got to be mindful of what we're spending here. Does somebody go in essentially a 2-for-1? Does it turn into Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün or something like that for one player and maybe a sweetener on the Celtics? I only bring that up because at some point, Brad Stevens is going to have to address that issue. Either ownership's going to tell him, we don't give a shit, we got deep pockets, go ahead and spend whatever you want, in which they'll spend more on tax than they will payroll, or at some point, something has to break for Brad Stevens. And I would say this. What are you really getting for Kristaps Porzingis right now, bro? You and I both love the guy, but he's damaged goods and hasn't been able to produce consistently in the postseason. So are you selling him on hope? And what are you really getting in return for that guy at $35 or $6 million next year?
Gosh, I mean, I think there might even be more value on him on the Celtics than trying to move him.
I agree.
Given that I do believe that post-virus syndrome, I believe, is what Brad Stevens said, whether it's long COVID or whatever it is, it wasn't a physical a knee or a shoulder, right? Which to me, it was having no wind. And basketball, that sport, you need wind. Wind is paramount. Before we talk about some of before we talk about, we could talk about all day about who they could move, right?
Oh, yeah.
Derek White's a guy who I certainly don't want to see exiting stage left. That would upset me. But
Agreed.
I just want to talk about something LeBron said, because I really think this is interesting, and I hate to say it, but I think it sort of followed Brown and Tatum a little bit. So I guess it was on the Mind the Game podcast, and this is LeBron's quote, talking about Brown and Tatum. It seems like sometimes they get bored sometimes with I don't want to say the process, because I mean, expletive, they are who they are. And when you look at Tatum and Jaylen Brown, this is years and years and years. They punch their 10,000 hours. But sometimes it seems like they get a little bored because of how great they are. Not only as those two as individuals, but then as a team, sometimes it looks like they get bored. And I think the word bored is really interesting, because it's not an intentional, oh, we're just going to be lackadaisical. It's literally bored, where we're just going to chuck a 3-point shot, and maybe we're not going to penetrate into the paint to get a better look at a three when we're up 70-50 in back-to-back games. I just think it's really interesting, because I agree with LeBron. I think this team should have won at least 2 championships by now, and I'm not complaining. Thank you very much for Banner 18. But there are years you go back where the Heat, where they're down 3-0, they come back and tie it at 3. I think they would have made more noise in the finals, I believe, against Denver, if that team is right. So and prior years, I just think they threw up all over themselves in certain spots. So I guess from my standpoint, I agree with King James on this. And that to me is a reason these guys are still growing and reason to keep them together.
Yeah, you would definitely think so. And look, LeBron knows that, because that's what happened in Miami. I mean, really, there were times that they were just toying with their food. The Miami Heat were, whenever they were in that big run down there. So I think a guy like LeBron, he really sees it, understands it, and has firsthand experience with it. I think the Tatum Brown piece of this should be okay. That should be the core of the two in which everything is built around. There's just that part of me. You know what it is, Jay? After doing sports talk for 28 years, you can't ignore the business of sports. And to a lot of people, it's boring as hell. And I understand it. But it's a part of Brad Stevens' job. And Stevens is like Belichick. He's not afraid to shake it up. Look at what he did to build the team that he did now. There's no way that guy doesn't have what's the next version of the Boston Celtics right in front of him. And then how quickly does he put that together? That's why I'm so intrigued by all of these possibilities. But what comes from that is what LeBron pointed out. Everybody knows, well, this guy's good. That guy's good. We've all won together. If we're coasting right now, we know we can kick it into high gear because we have the best team in basketball, and that becomes very dangerous. And I think LeBron has been a part of some of those. And, look at Golden State was like that. You could argue Game 7 when LeBron went in there and took over the fourth quarter of that game with the big block and stuff like that, and kind of stuck it to him. So maybe LeBron sees a little bit of a warning sign where the roster does need to be shaken up a little bit for the sake of almost resetting the hunger to get a championship.
Well, I hope they learn a little bit just in terms of how they play with Tatum in terms of the team basketball, because there were some moments in Game 5 where there were thoughts about, okay, well, now they're sort of sharing the ball like really they were early. And I think sometimes when you get bored, you get out of your stuff. But, Not unlike I trusted Mike Vrabel in the room, I feel so confident in Brad Stevens to sort of navigate these waters. Traded away Marcus Smart, the heartbeat of the team, and it hoisted a banner. So well done.
That's a good point.
So I have a lot of faith in Stevens, and I understand that Wick Grossbeck's dad maybe didn't want to sell the team, but not a bad time, right? Not a bad time to exit stage right for Wick Grossbeck, right? With all this luxury tax mess, the Tatum injury, you hoisted the banner. I mean, a great run for Wick Grossbeck. He's still going to be involved, but I know these franchises, you could say sell high. The franchise are only going up.
Bro, it's amazing what they bought it for and what they're going to flip it for. And to think that the old man didn't want to do it, like I think Wick has
old man did.
The old man. There you go.
That's what I think.
Oh, okay. And that would make sense because this was Wick's toy. I do believe upon further research, because we had this wrong in the beginning when I was working in Boston, I do believe there are 3 other Grossbeck siblings other than Wick. So I think it came down to, okay, Daddy, you let Wick build it. Now it's time for all of us to get our billion each and ride off into the sunset. And I mean, can you imagine sitting around the Thanksgiving Day table and having that discussion where Dad just looks up from eating a piece of turkey and is like, I think it's time to sell the Celtics. And then the shit show that ensued of the other siblings like high-fiving each other, like, dapping each other under the table, doing like, yes, yeah, finally Dad's going to sell this thing. Wick gets his toy taken away, but I get my money. It's just like it's stupid. Jay, they bought it for, I think it was like $500 million or whatever in the world it was. And it's now over $6 billion. It's nutty. And you know what's nuts too, just quickly, because you got me on this? Like LeBron thinks he's going to be like the sole owner of a team. There's an old line from Chris Rock when he was like, Shaq is rich. The guy who signs his check is wealthy. And unfortunately, with these franchise values, now guys like LeBron, who are a billionaire unto themselves, don't have the scratch to get a team on their own. That's wild when you think about it.
Well, it really is. And when you talk about what, a $250 million luxury tax penalty, right? Or so, that's actually a consideration. It's actually considering it. It's fascinating. This is interesting. Wick Grossbeck's family situation inspired a new NBC sitcom. I love it. I
think he's consulting on it or something like that. This is what rich people do. Do you know what else Wick Grossbeck is doing? And by the way, I have a tiny bit of relationship with the guy. I like the dude. He's done what all these like rich people do. He's got a band now where he's like, strumming the old guitar, playing.
Oh, yeah? Letting the lettuce grow. He's going to have long hair. I think it's going to keep growing. Yeah. Good for Wick.
Yeah. But he's got the like Jimmy Dolan has his little band. I don't know if you've seen that. No, you go back to the Knicks. JD and the Straight Shots. For years it was his Knicks or Straight Shits. Is really what the name of the thing should have been called, but nevertheless.
But I want to say something about Joe Mazzulla real quickly, because I still absolutely love Joe Mazzulla as a leader and as a head coach. And I'm sure he learned a lot here. You know what I mean? I'm sure he learned a lot. And when I think about Mike Vrabel, I know we'll talk about the Patriots, but it's like, gosh, is there anything that bothers you about Mike Vrabel? Like, I can't think of a thing that bothers me about Mike Vrabel or I would change, right? And with Mazzulla, there's nothing that I would pinpoint other than I think he's very strong-willed, but I also think he's open-minded to sort of his own growth. And I think that there's going to be a lot of challenges moving forward. I'm much more bullish on the Celtics in the regular season next year compared to most. I think the roster is going to be good. And even if there's some increased responsibility, I said ad nauseum, I think they could have won a championship without a star, maybe not JT. But I'm really a believer in Joe Mazzulla. And I think while I think he is super, super humble, I think it will be a humbling experience and a good one for him to sort of try to chase Banner 19.
Yeah, bro, I think we need to like remind ourselves that this guy was on an NBA bench for about 3 years before he was literally shoved into the head role and said, we know you're not ready, but don't worry, we'll kind of hold your hand through it. And when he was 33 years old, his experience was Glenville State, Fairmont State, which is in Fairmont, West Virginia, not far from where I used to live back in Western Pennsylvania, freaking hillbillies. He had a couple years with the Red Claws, back to Fairmont State as the head coach, and then he was an assistant in the NBA. No NBA experience, and that's not taking anything away from him, but this is a dude who's literally 6 years into an NBA run, and he's had 3 as a head coach of arguably the best team in those 3 years. So he's going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. What you hope is that they're not fatal mistakes. And that's where people took some umbrage of calling timeouts and stopping runs and things like that. But to me, those are things that are learned over the natural course of high-level playoff basketball. So we looked at Tatum and Brown early in their career, Jay, and the stuff they overcame to get to where they are. Joe Mazzulla is where those guys were in 2018, 2019, 2020 relative to his development. I'm with you. He's introspective. He's hard on himself. He's hard on the players. He's going to get better from this 100%. 100%.
You know, and my biggest flaw that I saw, and I didn't, there were in the blowout in game 3, I talked about this, like he was very punctual with his timeouts, even when it got a little tight. And in games 1 and 2, I think that's his biggest flaw. When these guys get bored, to use LeBron's words, he sometimes loves letting them play it out because he's so he loves just inspiring them to sort of get out of it on their own. And I think sometimes that was really the big thing for me, is sort of not bringing them in and ripping them when maybe that lead got cut to 18 and he saw it getting to single digits.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Cody just threw it in the chat. Sometimes I think he wants to teach them a lesson. And I do think there is a lot of, with the Joe, it's like, if your kid is struggling doing something and it's, hey, you just got to keep trying, and they're struggling. But then when they break through, it's a moment of growth, and they like tying their shoes or something like that. I know that sounds very pedestrian, but if you've dealt with little kids and trying to teach them to tie their shoes, it's a whole freaking process. And I do believe there is a little bit of that with Joe Mazzulla I'm going to make them grind through it because it's going to make them better, which is great from the player end, but does that make him the best coach he can be? And I think that's where maybe they've kind of intersected here, and they're going to figure out the happy medium.
I agree. So this Forged in Foxborough, did Cody sent us a text yesterday, like that's your homework to watch Forged in Foxborough. And I had already done my homework before the assignment was assigned.
Me too. Yeah, me too. One of my kids found it and they were watching it in the garage with their friends. And they're like, oh, have you seen the Forged in Foxborough? I totally got Shawshanked. I stood in the garage with the boys for like an hour watching it and all the draft stuff.
Shawshanked? Oh. Is that what you just called it? That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning when the movie Shawshank Redemption comes on, you just stop and watch?
Absolutely. Every time. I got completely hooked. I get completely I get it. I'm so used to using it as a term. That's
hilarious.
Oh my God.
Hilarious. My wife would really appreciate that. So for those of you New England Patriots fans, while Gresh catches his breath,
oh Lord,
those of you Patriots fans who haven't seen Forged in Foxborough, what a gift this behind the scenes. You got your own Hard Knocks with the main character, Michael Vrabel, who is maybe the most interesting man in the world. And I love Gerard Mayo, but he may be one of the least interesting. But I mean, I can't get enough of Mike Vrabel. I could go on and on. I guess one thing that sticks out for me, and I guess I want to talk a lot about the draft room. They showed a lot about the draft room. I'm not trying to spoil this for the fans, but I've been one to bang on Elliott Wolf a little bit, and it feels as though there was some talk with sort of moving certain picks around, and with the pick for Kyle Williams, I believe it was pick 69. Forgive me, I didn't look at, but he sort of was steadfast. No, we're getting our guy Kyle Williams, and when this all shakes out, we could talk about Will Campbell all day long. I think Kyle Williams, I think they hit on a receiver, and if I'm saying it too early, sorry. And I think that Elliott Wolf was a big part of them being steadfast in that spot.
Well, 100% agree, Jay. And Cody sent us a little film and a breakdown of a guy who was kind of showing the concept of how they would work Steph Diggs and Tank Dell together, and how there's a lot of translatability Kyle Williams to Tank Dell in terms of style of player. The other thing, too, is when you dig in on Mac Hollins, a lot of his snaps are out of the slot as well. So if Kyle Williams can start to develop, there's no reason he couldn't be the outside receiver opposite. Hey,
we're going to pick.
Code, that audio's on.
Thanks.
Wow. But you got Kyle Williams in the slot lined up with Diggs, and then you can have Kyle Williams opposite Diggs as well. My God, there's a lot of different ways that Josh McDaniels is going to be able to use this guy. And I'm starting to wonder if dudes like Jalen Polk are even going to find their way into getting 15 snaps a game in this McDaniels offense.
Well, it's really interesting, and we've talked a lot about the free agent acquisitions. I did this football podcast the other day, and I literally just listed off 12 guys that were not on the roster that are certainly going to be part of the 53 this year. Sort of blow your mind. Drake Maye threw 4 picks in practice yesterday, right? And I know it's not the end of the world, right? But Christian Gonzalez, too. By the way, Christian Gonzalez, I think Devin McCourty said he thinks he's going to be the best cornerback in the NFL this season. Yep. Wouldn't surprise me, Carlton Davis on the other side. But Drake Maye, we've talked about this on multiple shows. We're all excited about the Patriots. We're excited about Will Campbell protecting his blind side. We're excited about all the acquisitions. But it's going to be up to Drake Maye, in my opinion, to take this jump with this team. And so I don't know if I'm glad that he threw 4 picks. I kind of am, because he's the guy to me that is going to be the reason they really do take a giant step or a baby step this upcoming season.
Well, I know you're not going to like the reference, but give me a moment here. We're going back literally to, I think, Mac Jones in terms of the way McDaniels is going to introduce the NFL to the young quarterback. And I know you're already rolling your eyes, but let's remember, they put Mac Jones in a spot to where he was going to battle Cam to win the starting job. And if you go back to the early parts of Mac, there were interceptions there. He saw ghosts, got better. I think that's what you're looking for in May, meaning let him throw a shit ton of picks in the month of May, knowing, okay, here's our offense, and when you see this, do this. This is the real part of like a rookie. It's almost like starting over with a rookie in a way, except he's got a little bit of experience that you can sort of lean on. So I broke down these numbers the other day. So Mac in his rookie year, Jay, threw for 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. Don't you feel like automatically Drake Maye will give you close to or about the same amount of yards, maybe a little more, probably a couple more touchdowns, and hopefully about 7 less interceptions or something like that? I feel like if they go back to the basics with the kid and teach him the McDaniels way, not this horse shit that he was learning last year, that they're going to be able to accelerate that a little bit. But the thought is, we're going to go back to like it was with young Mac, start over, see what the kid already knows, and then we can press on the accelerator in week 5.
I love all of that. I mean, every time I hear the name Mac Jones, it takes me to just this odd place. As you know, because when we first met, we had a lot to say about Mac Jones.
You did.
It's really so interesting with Drake Maye, and I'm so excited to watch this team play. And we've talked about the schedule. But before we even get to the schedule, like there's just so many moments with Mike Vrabel, whether it's him asking Will Campbell to break him down out of the huddle, sort of that little bit of giving Will a little bit of juice, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of leadership. Milton Williams has been inspired from a conditioning standpoint, and Vrabel has sought him to sort of be a leader there. I really do believe whether or not they win a championship, like I guess what I'm telling you is that I believe if Drake Maye is the real deal, that the championship window is opening very, very quickly. I really do believe, like, I'm so bullish on this team. I just am. I think they're going to be really, really good if Drake Maye can be good. And I think Mike Vrabel really, I think, is a magical leader. And the fact that Tennessee fired him feels like a big blessing.
You know, I'm a balloon popper. However, I'm going to lift your balloon in what you just said. Think about this. How tough is it going to be for the Kansas City Chiefs to come up with their version 2.0? Like you and I lived
a great point.
The different versions of Brady, right? There was the early part, and then there was the Randy Moss era, and then kind of came Gronk, and it was a little bit of Hernandez, and then it was Gronk and Edelman, and it was almost like you can take 5-year windows.
Yep.
So what are the Kansas City Chiefs going to look like in a year or two whenever you start to take away some of those weapons and they got to become a different football team? Hey, let's be real. How much longer is the window for the Bills? Or are they about to, go on their third sort of rebuild around Josh Allen just to try to find a way to get to a Super Bowl and get past Kansas City? Baltimore is aging. They're going to have to repurpose. Jay, it's not completely nuts to think that in 2 years, the Patriots are at least in a discussion of being one of the 4 best teams in the AFC.
I hear that, but what I will say is the 3 teams you mentioned, I'm probably most bullish on those teams still being good in 5 years, given those 3 quarterbacks. I really do believe that those rosters, while they may have some reset, will still be very good. But as Cody pulls up the schedule here, Gresh, and I have a blank copy in front of me, but I went through their schedule sort of as a pass for a show I was doing, and I was hard on them and came out 9-8, 6-3 at home, 3-5 on the road. And I felt like I was sort of hard on them. So I would like to just real quickly with you, if you'll humor me, on May 21st, just going through these games together and coming up with W's and L's together. We got to come to a consensus, which one way or another. All right. So week 1, home to the Raiders.
Oh, that's a win.
Okay. At Miami Dolphins. It's going to be hot down here. I think the Dolphins are taking a step back, but I'll give them a loss there.
I'm with you. Patriots never win in Miami in September.
Okay, next 2, home to Steelers, home to Panthers. I'm not giving them both after they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. If we're being conservative, I like them to win both here. Do you? I mean, where do you go here?
Well, I like the spot coming off of Miami because I definitely think it's going to be a loss. And then they're coming home to a Steelers team that it's really hard to handicap the Steelers because if they have Aaron Rodgers.
Assume they do.
Okay, then they're losing the game, but they're beating Carolina.
Beautiful. That's how I had it. At the Bills night game.
That's a loss.
Can't wait. Gotta go loss. They'll beat the Saints on the road. If we're being, we are bullish on this team, that's a game you got to win. I think you get the next 2 at the Saints and at the Tennessee Titans. I am hopeful to be in the building in Nashville, Tennessee on October 19th.
Oh, that'd be big. Wow. Interesting. You'd be there. Interesting. You'd be in that city, but there's no way, bro, Vrabel's losing the revenge game against Tennessee, right? There's no chance.
I agree.
I think there are 2 locks on the schedule for the Patriots that you can safely bet right now. Opening day, there's no way opening day at home that he's going to whiz it away, especially with McDaniels and the Raiders, and he's still pissed. And then they're winning that game in Tennessee. Those are the 2 mortal locks for the Patriots this year.
So I gave them a win there, and then we're home to Cleveland and Atlanta.
Beat Cleveland. You know what? This is the spot where they could flip, meaning lose to a Cleveland team you shouldn't lose to, beat an Atlanta team that's probably a little better than you. Either way, Jay, I kind of feel it's 1-1 in there.
I agree. So I gave him a win against the Browns and a loss against Atlanta. But if this team, I talked to a Patriots fan at a birthday party this weekend, told him 9-8, and he's like, I have 12-5, and I don't think he's crazy. No, I don't, Gresh, because it's not out of the realm that they handle Steelers, Panthers, Browns, Falcons all at home. I mean, I don't think they're favorites in 11 games this season. They were favored in 0 last season.
Right.
But either way, we're giving them win Browns, loss Falcons, let's say. At Tampa, I gave them a loss, even though I love them. I'm telling you, I'm so bullish on this Patriots team. We'll give them a loss at Tampa. Is that fair?
Yeah, yep.
Win at home against the Jets Thursday night.
100%.
Quick turn. That'll be tough, but I think they get that. At the Bengals is a loss. Home to the Giants is a win. You with me there?
Yep.
And then I'm going to give them, I'm going to give them this home win against the Bills. What do you think?
I don't hate that
lost.
Because
all right.
It's coming off a bye, and I don't know what the deal is with the Bills the week before, but that sets up for the Patriots that there's one game every year where a team gets a win against someone that they shouldn't. Most would look at this and say the Patriots aren't ready to beat them yet. This is the one they get. They beat the Bills at home.
Yeah, so we'll give them a dub there. They lose at Baltimore.
Yep.
The following week, I'll give them wins to close out the last 2 games at the Jets and versus the Dolphins. You with me there?
Yep, very fair.
So that's 10-7, right? Now, trust me, it's 10-7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's 10-7. Not sure what we got there, Bone, but we're 10-7. So what I'll tell you, Gresh, is that I feel as though I think everything depends on the guy at the top of that schedule, Drake Maye, but I think they have a great chance to completely flip this thing. And it's not solely because of the schedule. You know?
Well, I think offensively, they're going to frustrate people early on. And what I mean by that is that I think they're really going to lean running back heavy early in the year and then set the kid up to sort of grow from there. Now, this mini camp coming up, the mandatory stuff, is going to be really interesting to see how much of the McDaniels quote unquote offense.
Cody, we don't need that. Love you.
How much have they given Drake Maye? And how much have they given this group? Because when you get veteran wide receivers like they do, and you're mixing in young guys, and Kyle Williams is young, there are people there to kind of carry him along a little bit. If you look at the big mistake that the Patriots made last year, Kendrick Bourne was the only veteran in the room. I don't hate KB, but he was hurt. So early in the year, there was no example in the room at wide receiver. There really wasn't. I know you had Jacoby Brissett, but there really wasn't another example in the quarterback room. There was no Brian Hoyer to be whispering things in your ear as you're kind of watching practice. This year, it feels like, Jay, if they're counting on a young guy, they're still insulated with the appropriate amount of veteran depth to either coach that player up or to be able to ease that player in. And I think McDaniels is going to do that. He loves Ramondre. I know you don't love him, but I think until they really say, okay, we can start to turn the kid loose a little bit, it's going to be Ramondre early on. But the one thing that they won't accept are the fumbles the way Mayo did. I think the fundamentals of this team are going to go back to where we were with Bill Belichick, not the example. We almost have to erase last year out of our mind in terms of anything we think about this team coming into this year.
Well, and last year they had a lot of good moments on defense, and I look at Cody pulling up the win total. I like the over 8.5 quite a bit, and I do think it is going to all be about how the quarterback makes the adjustment. When you think about that receiver room, there was a reporter that asked Mike Vrabel about it and the depth of it, and I think it will shake itself out in the right ways. In terms of running backs, so you talk about Mondre, and we have Antonio Gibson there. So Trevion Henderson, seems as though the Bears were keen on Trevion Henderson as well, perhaps trying to move up one slot to draft the same player. And the Patriots seemed very close to trading that they let us in the draft room, right? Forge and Foxborough. Mm-hmm. They seemed very close to moving out of that 38 slot and obtaining another pick later. But, almost as if, all three guys sort of were asking each other, like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? So again, get the guy. It'll be really interesting to see how good Trevion Henderson is going to be in this league, right? Because, the running back, we understand the value of that position, but I think that running back sort of value is creeping back up. You see what the Ravens did with Derrick Henry. I think Trevion Henderson, I think there are going to be a lot of teams that wish they had maybe pulled the trigger late round one.
Jay, look at what happened last year. The impact that Saquon Barkley had with the Eagles, the impact that a dude who left the Raiders and ended up going to Green Bay. Yeah, Josh Jacobs. Running backs had big impacts this year. And I think especially in the second round, no one's ever been afraid to draft a running back. But I'm with you. I'm high on Henderson, and I'm also high on the running backs becoming a factor again in the passing game, and not just in a James White type way. Remember at one point in time, Jay, we all would get excited for a screen because they knew how to run it, when to call it, and it felt like, oh, you got to bust out a play on, 2nd and 15. Here's the screen that gets you to 3rd and 4. And you're like, God dang, that's a great play call. That stuff is coming back with these running backs, and it's going to be the accordion effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I think McDaniels is going to be able to, with the tight ends that he's got on the running backs, you're going to play the accordion. I'm going to spread them out, and I'm going to pack them in, and then spread them out and pack them in. And he can manipulate by formation as good as anybody. And let me throw one at you. What happens when they put both backs on the field? Mondre's in the eye, and then there goes Henderson out into the slot, getting a linebacker on him. How many times did we see that with Josh McDaniels over the years with all these running backs? Get ready for it. It's coming back. I think the Patriots running backs have sneaky good value when it comes to fantasy this year, because one of them might not be great, but if they can each get 900 yards rushing and 450 yards receiving. Oh my God, that's massive for this offense.
I'm blown away with excitement. I want to touch on the UFC before we get out of here. A lot of moving parts, a lot of things happening. So UFC 316 in Newark, New Jersey. I will not be attending that one. That's Merab against Sean O'Malley. I'm looking forward to seeing that fight. We talked about Patchy Mix. He's stepping in for Marlon Cheeto Vera there. He'll face Mario Batista. Mario Batista's won 7 in a row. But I just want to talk quickly about Patchy Mix, and Cody, feel free to chime in anytime. We know Tatiana Suarez pretty well. She's been a friend of Bilal Muhammad's, and Patchy. It's a very sort of tight-knit community in a way. And so I've known Tatiana for a while and gotten to know Patchy a little bit through her, but a lot of people think he's the best bantamweight in the world. And so to get a guy like Mario Batista, who's won 7 straight in the UFC, for both guys, it's just unbelievable. Feels like a title eliminator to me. And there's Rafian Stotts, who is a good friend too. But I will say Patchy Mix is really... I don't love seeing these elite martial artists operate out of the big show, so I'm glad that he is now in it.
Yeah, I am too. And just for a quick reference, when Bellator was a brand, they would come to Mohegan Sun, and my kids and I and my wife would always go. I think I've seen Patchy Mix fight like 3 times over the course of just my live MMA live, and he is exciting. And this is Jay, if we're being honest, this is overdue. This has gotten wrapped up into the bullshit business of MMA with all these multiple brands. This guy has been UFC ready, in my opinion, for a couple of years, and I'm geeked to see him have a chance. He does not feel like the kind, I know you're like you mentioned, Bautista's on a hell of a win streak, but Patchy Mix does not feel like the kind of guy who's going to miss this opportunity, if you know what I mean.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. UFC 317 was announced, International Fight Week, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I will say to you quickly, gosh, I wish my friend Bilal Muhammad had won, because I really wanted to see Ilia Topuria against Islam Makhachev, right? Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. Topuria is a huge favorite, like minus 345.
Yeah.
But that doesn't surprise me at all, because I just think he is the hardest man to beat in the world. I'm excited to be there. I'll be doing a little Professional Grappling Federation draft the week of. So International Fight Week should be fun in June, Gresh. And yeah, June's going to be a busy month. We've got Dirty Boxing 2, June 14th in Miami at the Hangar. Excited for that. And I know you'll be all over the radio airwaves.
Oh, but brother, I saw that, what is it? Chorizo Rosenstrike is going to be part of Dirty Boxing.
Oh,
I see that.
Biggie Boy Rosenstrike. Dirty Boxing ain't fucking around. I tell you, they're bringing in some big names. I can't wait. And, for those of you that have never heard of Dirty Boxing, they did a pilot, and then DBX1, I was a part of. DBX2 coming in June. DBX1, Yoel Romero was the main event. Andrei Arlovsky was the co-main event. But, it's Dirty Boxing. Kicks are allowed. You can ground and pound to the finish. So if your opponent gets grounded, you can sort of go down and strike with them down there. If it turns into any type of grappling, they break it up. Any type of sort of too much clinching, they break it up. But it's fascinating. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's very cool, and you did a great job. Hey, you mentioned Ilia Topuria. Can I circle back, because this is something I saw on Twitter before we sat down. So apparently, Ilia's brother Alexander confirmed Ilia's ultimate plan to become the UFC's first 3-division champion. So it says here, Ilia needs to beat Oliveira for the soon-to-be vacant lightweight belt, then move up to welterweight to challenge the champ, who they assume will be Islam, and beat him. Is this nutty? Do you think this is, I'm very curious as to your initial reaction on this, because it feels like it's only a matter of time before we end up getting a 3-division champion. It sort of feels like. I don't know. Where do you land on this?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really. Even my friend Bilal Muhammad, when he would sort of talk a little bit about going to 85, it just doesn't. The whole double champ stuff is fine, and I get it. I think, frankly, we should have 155, 165, 175. There should be more weight classes anyway. So I think a lot of guys, I think Ilia Topuria is the definition of a tweener. But when I think about him at 170, I don't know what his reach is, but the current champion, Jack Della Maddalena, feels like a very big, long man for Ilia Topuria. So I'd like to see him at 55 first. And then I'll tell you what I think about, but I think it's a big jump from 55 to 70.
I would agree, and it now feels like this is the way maybe some guys will negotiate, or hey, let me throw the dream fight scenario out there of all these things that can happen. It's a long, windy road just to get to having a championship fight in the UFC, let alone to start to think about, well, I achieved this goal, let me just go win this title and win that title. It's not that easy. The divisions, especially at those weight classes, are too loaded.
So, unless I'm mistaken, I think Jack Della Maddalena's reach is 79 inches. Are we saying Toporia's is 69? Is that what right? So, and then Cody, you can maybe confirm if I'm right or wrong, because I can't do two things at once necessarily. But if that's the case, I just think Jack is long. I think his reach presented some problems for Muhammad as well.
I would agree with you. I just want to throw it out there.
73 inches. So I'm an idiot. I don't know why I said 79, 73 inches. But either way, I think Della Maddalena is long for Topuria, if that's what
I would agree. I just looked it up. Topuria at 69 inches in terms of the reach. So you're right. It would be problematic. But it is. Well, yeah. Hey, listen, you never know. Lord knows. Hey, look, I'm sick. There've been people talking about beating up gorillas and stuff like that, as Mike Francesor would say. They save the gorilla. My God's sakes. Anyway, that is it. I'm sorry for being a giant P yesterday. I couldn't do it. I was hacking. It was awful. Even my energy today has been.
No, I think you did well today, Gresh.
It's been lackluster to say the least. But anyway, my man Jason Anik is all over it. Oh my God. So Jay, you'd mentioned when is Dirty Boxing? Like
Dirty
when
Boxing,
are you?
June 14th in Miami. Can't wait.
Going to be a ton of fun. So I've got Saturday morning on Sirius XM on Mad Dog Radio. I got the little Sunday afternoon, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. before Memorial Day. Then I'm in for DA and Babchick on the morning show on Memorial Day morning on Mad Dog.
With who?
I think maybe just me.
See, what the fuck is that, Sirius XM? Can I not be DA or Babchick for a fucking morning? You don't even have to pay me. Anyway, I'm sure they don't love those F-bombs, but whatever.
Mad Dog said, "Hey, don't doing that."
So whoever got you that gig, you could tell him that they'll have another guy joining you for free if that doesn't get in anyone's way.
I would absolutely love it. And then I got the Zach Gelb show later on that day on Memorial Day. And then the next day is another edition of Gas, where you can catch us right here on YouTube. We're all over the place. Follow our guy Cody Marrow at Cody_Marrow, at Boston Anik, at The Real Gresh. We're out there and everywhere. Hopefully this is the last time I have to push the show back for a day for being a gigantic puss. We'll see you next week.